If you want to get a good person to do an evil thing, you make him religious.
What do you mean by good? Where does good come from?
My sail is coming from the same place as your wind.
You'll see his ability to answer a question with an insult in a way where it feels emotionally like the question has been answered, even though it actually hasn't been. With that being said, let's dive in.
I'd like to ask you a question that I think Leibniz brought up many years ago. If there is no God, why does anything exist?
We both have this Navy background.
Yes, sir.
In Portsmouth, where I'm from, there's an old story about a young man taking his captain's examination before a board of admirals. And they say to him, right, your ship is on a lee shore. It's being driven by whatever wind towards the rocks. What are you going to do to get out of this terrible position? He says, I would pile on an extra sail and pull the stern hard to starboard and hope by this means to escape to save the ship. And they said, well, very well, but there's the wind is still blowing, the gale is coming at you still, and the rocks are getting nearer. Now what are you going to do? So I put on more sail and keep the helm hard down to starboard and maintain this position. But yes, but the wind is still blowing you, and the gale force has increased, and the rocks are getting near. Now what are you going to do? And he said, well, I'd cram on extra sail and keep the helm hard down to starboard. One of the admirals with rather red-faced exasperation at this point says, where are you getting all this extra sail from? And the young captain says, well, the same place you're getting all that extra wind from. Now, either a priori you believe in a creation story or you do not. I am, I'll just have to say it. I'm one of those people who's meant by Pascal when he says he's writing his pensée to those who are so made that they cannot believe. You have to include me in that. I don't believe in a creator. I don't believe I'm supervised. I don't believe that a being set the universe in motion, and I don't know.
Then how is it set in motion?
And I don't know any physicist who does, and I'm not a physicist.
I quoted
myself,
a lot of
but
them already.
If you and I had been having this argument in the 18th century, you'd be saying that I should recognize Jesus as my personal savior, and you wouldn't have heard of the Big Bang.
I would have heard of...
And you don't convince me.
What does that have to do with the question?
I'll just have to say this. You don't convince me that there's any connection between your faith and any scientific observation.
There's a difference between proof and persuasion.
I'm not here to debate physics, and I'm not competent to do so.
Okay, so you don't have an answer for that, how the universe came into existence out of nothing.
No more than you do, no.
Let's move to a second question.
If all space, all matter, and all time had a beginning, the cause must be outside of space, matter, and time.
You don't know how it happened, neither do I. Okay?
Well, now this is important, Dr. Taylor, because in his book, Christopher Hitchens on page 70 says that he knows that this happened without God. That's what you said. It works without God. So how does it work without God?
No, I'm sorry, I think you must be quoting my quotation from Laplace.
No,
am I not correct?
No. Page 70.
Laplace says it works without that assumption, yes.
Here's what you say. You say, however, and critically, we can now do this while dropping, or even if you insist, retaining the idea of God, but in either case, the theory works without that assumption. So how does it work without that assumption?
I'm repeating, first, as you'll notice, I say you can retain the idea if you like. It has no explanatory value. But it works without the assumption as well as it works with it.
How does it work without?
And I'm referring back to what the great astronomer and physicist Laplace said when asked by the emperor, when he'd shown him his working model of the universe, and the emperor said, well, there doesn't seem to be a God in this.
Laplace was centuries ago, Christopher. We've advanced in physics since then. We know other things.
Said, Your Majesty, it works without that assumption. I'm simply re-quoting him, and I'm saying, and you can retain the idea if you like. You're not going to convince me, and I don't think you've convinced anyone in the audience, that you know very much more about the origins of the universe than they did.
The question is asked, if there's no God, then why does anything exist? And there simply is not an answer given to that question, but there's a reframing of the question. There's a parabolish, banal, platitudinal story that's given about the wind and the sail. This is a classic reductionism. It's when you focus only on the mechanism and not at all on the agency. It would be like saying that a car engine can be properly, sufficiently explained by breaking down the mechanisms that bring about the combustion within the engine, but that is only the how. It does not explain the why. In order to explain the why, you have to also bring in the engineer, who is the agent. So you need both mechanism and agency to have a proper explanation of why is there this car engine? How did it get there? That is how God actually helps to explain the things that we see within the universe. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive back in.
Mr. Hitchens, would
Yes.
you like to ask a question of Dr. Turek?
Yes, I'd like to ask him what kind of Christian he is, and who are and who are not Christians in his view, who claim to be.
I'm a non-denominational Christian. I believe that anyone who believes that Jesus died and rose again for their sins is a Christian.
Simple as that. So it doesn't matter to you whether someone's a Catholic or a Mormon? No.
Mormons don't believe what I just said. Mormons have a works theology. Catholics, there's a debate over whether Catholics have a works theology. Recently, Benedict has said no. So yeah, that's fine.
Am I allowed to ask without cheating, to rephrase the question in a different way, very crisply?
Very crisply.
Suppose I was a baby being born in Saudi Arabia now. Would you wish me to be brought up as a Wahhabi or as an atheist?
Absolutely an atheist. I'm with you on that.
Good. Okay, thanks.
Wouldn't you?
Wouldn't I? Were you seriously asking me?
Second question. Please be brief.
Be brief.
Be brief. And for response, please be brief.
Oh, obviously.
You mentioned that you have all these moral issues with Christianity. Where do you get your morality from if we're just molecules in motion? What is morality?
Who says we're just molecules in motion?
You're a materialist. What else could you be?
We're fairly highly evolved primates who have an innate need for and recognition of human solidarity. You can call that morals if you wish. I think I would. It's only good people, but a lot of people, they say made in the image of God, are born as psychopaths and sociopaths. They don't feel this need. Indeed, they enjoy violating it. I don't know where that fits in, particularly to God's plan, but it's been put like this. Left to themselves, good people will do as much good as they can. Wicked people will do as much ill as they can. If you want to get a good person to do an evil thing, you make him religious.
What do you mean by good? Where does good come from?
Dr. Turek, I believe that would be a third question, and we have two.
Same place
I'm
as
trying to get him to answer the
my
first
sail.
question.
Sir, my sail is coming from the same place as your wind.
Even here in his attempted dismissal of objective morality, he brings in serial killers, but that is implicitly acknowledging God's moral standard. He's calling serial killers evil as opposed to good, and in doing so, he's referring to this third thing, this higher thing that you measure the behaviors of different humans against. To bring this to a head, I'm going to quote C.S. Lewis, who says this very well. He says succinctly, "My argument against God was that the universe seems so cruel and unjust. But how had I got this idea of just and unjust? A man does not call a line crooked unless he has an idea of a straight line. What was I comparing this universe against when I called it unjust?" And so to Hitchens, what are you measuring the behavior of a serial killer against when you call it unjust? What are you referring to make that determination, if not a higher third thing? And that moral law is what we're saying must come from a moral law giver, namely God himself. With that being said, thank you guys for watching again. Wherever you're at on your journey, you're welcome here. Let's think together, and I'll see you guys in the next video.